Buddy Manning here. Welcome to a practice edition of the Garden Report. Josue Pavon back. We talked about Kristaps Porzingis' return for the Game 1 coming up on Thursday. He's a new addition to the finals. This is going to be one of the guys who's playing in this kind of series for the first time. But quite a bit of the Celtics, many of the Celtics players have played in this environment before, particularly Tatum, Brown, and Horford, along with White in that 22 final series. Obviously a disappointing one. We were there. We watched them kind of crumble in that spot. And over the last 2 years, there's been a lot of talk about lessons learned from that. Joe Mazzulla there on the back of the bench, he had some stuff to say as well about his perspective on that series. Here's what he said today.
Yeah, I didn't really have a role in it because it wasn't my scout, and the way we just did things differently. And so I didn't really have much of a role in it. I'm more of just a natural observer. But the thing I remember the most was like you kind of brought it to your attention. What goes into winning a regular season game is no different. What goes into winning a playoff game, and just because it's the finals doesn't mean you need to focus on anything other than executing the details that are important. There were plenty of quote-unquote adjustments, blah, 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 and all that stuff, and at the end of the day, we didn't rebound the basketball, and, we didn't make shots down the stretch, and we lost some of the margin. So, I was able to look at it from the behind the bench and say, everyone's trying to make this out to be such an emotional thing in a situation, and it really comes down to the details. The team that plays the hardest, the team that executes, the team that makes the more plays, the team that dominates the margin, that's the team that wins. And it's the same no matter what, and we got to fight to keep that mentality.
So what can they take from that series? Obviously it's a different team, different approach, different coach this time around, and a different opponent too, but I think there's a lot of parallels you can draw to the poise you have to play with. What's important, as Joe talked about right there, and obviously there's an opponent in Luka who, like Curry, is going to command almost all of your attention.
Yeah, I think that's where you start, right? I think one of the biggest takeaways, or one of the biggest turning points, I should say, or the turning point from that 2022 series was that Game 4, right, when the Celtics had this big lead in the second half. You know how Joe always preaches about finishing quarters strong and making sure that you don't let a team completely take control of the game and all that. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways in terms of second half approach. Again, finishing the quarters strong on the defensive end of the floor, playing with a lot of poise. And I think the other biggest takeaway would be just the mind games that the Golden State Warriors played with the Celtics. Draymond Green played a big part in that. It wasn't always just pure basketball. It was a lot of the talk and things going on outside, that incredible Game 1 performance where the Celtics couldn't miss from three. All of a sudden, that was the last time they were able to put up shots like that, and that was something that Draymond talked about as well. So I think for this series, though, in particular, and we talked about this during our preview show, Luka, in-game, trash talking, all that type of stuff, I think that's going to be something where people are going to be looking at Tatum and Brown and see how they respond to that type of energy. And I think that's a lesson you learn from 2022 from a team like the Golden State Warriors where, same type of attitude, but this time you're the one with the experience, right? You're the one that's been there before. Luka's never been on this stage before. This is a big stepping stone for him, but if you're the Celtics, if you're Tatum and you're Brown, you've been there before. You know what it takes to get there, and you know that you've come a long way from those 2 years removed from the last time you were at the NBA Finals. And another player that really sticks out for me is Derek White. He's a completely different player compared
to a rough series that year,
to where he was exactly 2 years ago under Ime. He's talked a lot during the postseason about what Joe Mazzulla's meant for him and his confidence and coming out of his shell and evolving as a player. So yeah, I think a lot of those experiences you can base that off of what happened in 2022 and bring that into 2024, knowing that you're much better complete player, complete core this time around going up against the Mavericks.
As we gear up for Game 1, some great offers from our sponsors right now. Prize Picks, of course, our official daily fantasy sports partner here, offering you a 0.5 Tatum card that you can use as part of your daily fantasy team. Of course, you're just picking 2 of those cards, and it's a freebie. All you have to do is score 1 point. You pick more, you pick less on projections like that. Pick 2 or more guys and you're off. And if you can get 100% deposit match over there with the code CLNS, up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS. And Game Time right now, offering you $20 off your first ticket order there. Of course, the finals, there's some big prices going right now, but if you're going to find a deal, it's going to be on Game Time. So go over there, use that code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Of course, terms apply. One other thing I'm looking at in this series in terms of that experience factor here is how Tatum handles it, because he obviously struggled more than anybody in that series. Saw crowds. I think he's going to see similar similar crowds this time around.
Yeah.
He's going to have the responsibility at different points to go on Luka and take that challenge, especially in the big moments. And of course, ball control is going to be crucial here too, and that's something this team's done so much better this year. I think just the mantra of doing the little things, paying attention to those margins, and making the right play has carried this team pretty far this year.
Yeah.
And those are going to be what's most important, because you know Dallas is going to throw crowds at him. They're going to throw bodies at the rim. I'm sure he's going to have some shooting struggles in this series at different points as well. But it's all going to be about how Tatum shows poise. I think you talked about some of the trash talk and stuff like that. And obviously, I think there'll be some other guys on the Celtics that can handle that and some of the other jobs in this series. But for Tatum, to me, it's just tough defense, rebounding, and making the right play on offense and taking the right shots too, as we talked about last night. That's big.
Right, but I think the first thing is what makes everything easier for him, right? Everything comes together when he's playing defense at a high level, when he's, applying constant pressure. The way he ended that series against the Pacers, it really opened up his offense, made things easier for him when he's coming downhill, in attack mode, getting to the free throw line. Those 25, 27 point, performances, they come easy for him, especially when he doesn't have to be the one that puts the team on his back. He has so many different options now, and I think as a playmaker, the way he's evolved, he's so much more comfortable in that position. So I'm not worried about it, but again, I do think it does start on the defensive end of the floor. If he's putting forth that type of effort, I think everything else will come together. In terms of his shot selection and getting other guys involved, he's shown us the improvements he's made in that part of his game in a big way in the playoffs, especially in those big moments where they needed him to essentially make the right decision for them to win the game. He hasn't messed up those moments. He hasn't gone back to those bad habits of trying to bring a team, put the team on his back and try to do a little bit of everything, or just try to be the main guy, main focal point on the offense. He's much more comfortable with those coverages, and I think he's much more comfortable in making those decisions. So I can't wait for it to all come together, Bobby, because, everyone's been talking about this. Tatum has to get back. He has to win a championship. That's how he enters these type of conversations of being one of the best players in the NBA. And to do it against a team where, the best player isn't on the Celtics side, I think it's must-see TV, man. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and Brown obviously has to do the damage away from Tatum, as he has all playoffs. I think we all feel pretty good about that. Interesting, too, Joe saying he wasn't a big part of that 22 series, and he was observing, and I know one thing he's going to take from that is they had that drop going on Curry, and Curry was going off. But they were in a good spot, and everyone else was being accounted for. And then when they switched up, that's when the other guys started killing you, and that's when the series really fell apart. And I think there's some parallels to that here. Luka's going to go off. He's going to get his.
That's when Wiggins started going off, right.
But can you control Kyrie and the role guys? That's going to be the big thing here. Of course, check out our other great sponsors here, HelloFresh. You can get free appetizers for life when you go to HelloFresh.com/gardenapps. Of course, that's one in every box for however long you subscribe over there, and it's a great subscription service, fresh ingredients, laid out instructions, prepackaged, all the rest, right to your door how you want it. That's HelloFresh.com/gardenapps. And check out Nutrafol. Get ahead on your hair loss, and they have great products for that, for men and women. So go over there and check that out at Nutrafol.com/garden and get yourself a discount on your first month's subscription over there as well. That's Nutrafol.com/garden. He's Josue Pavon. I'm Bobby Manning. We are at TD Garden tomorrow morning, checking out what Porzingis looks like. We talked about that a little bit.
Can't wait, man.
Gonna hear from everybody, Kyrie, Luka, all the rest. Jaylen Brown as well. We're still waiting to hear from about this series as well. So we'll get that tomorrow. Subscribe to CLNS Media for all those interviews and more. And Celtics All Access for continuing coverage. And who knows who we'll run into at TD Garden tomorrow. Many guests to come to talk about the finals that are still somehow 2 days away.
I know, man. We still got some time.
Again, Josue Pavon by Manning. This has been a practice edition of the Garden Report.
What's going on, everyone? It's Josue Pavon here. If you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed this video. Make sure you follow all of our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS, and of course, follow us here on YouTube.